This is update for October 31, 2022, day 250 of the war, end of the date update. So as always, I'm going to start with the general topics and then we're going to switch to the battlefield. So there are a few important things. One is Ukrainian energy infrastructure was attacked again today, and there were a lot of sort of successful hits, which unfortunately Ukrainian propaganda internally kind of spins it as, oh, we shot down, let's say, 80% of the rockets, but 20% is enough to basically take out Ukrainian infrastructure out. So what happened today? Russia focused on attacking transformers near hydropower stations. So there's one here, right north of Kiev. Then there's one here. It's called Kaniv, and then Kremenchuk. I think this one Kremenchuk. There's this one Ukraine doesn't really control. So what they did, they attacked here north of Kiev, then they attacked here near Cherkasy, and in Kremenchuk here as well. And there is another one that you don't really see, but it's here. It's Dniester River here. This river kind of goes, splits actually Moldova into this Russian controlled part and actual sort of Moldova controlled part. And it kind of creates very deep canyon there. And actually the capacity of this hydropower station is larger than most of the of this or this or this, except for this one near Dnipro is I think Zaporizhya one is the largest one, or Dnipro, I'm not sure. But this one is really big. This was attacked as well. So what this really creates is Ukrainian energy. So power is being generated by these hydropower stations, but that power cannot go into Ukrainian power grid. And so they basically isolated those power stations and they don't produce energy anymore into power grid. This essentially sent the power grid into the literally almost collapse today. So for example, in Kiev, about 80% of the city does not have water supply anymore. So it's slowly turning into sort of civilian catastrophe, basically, because what most people realize, and I guess they should have realized before, that cities are essentially big traps. In the war, they are to be avoided at all costs. Even middle size, anything, the villages are the safest places during the war where you can survive. And unfortunately, there's still a lot of people in Kyiv who returned actually in say April, May, June, when they were feeling that okay, the tides are turning, and Ukrainian propaganda was trumpeting, oh, we won, and everything's wonderful and great. And so a lot of people returned back from Europe, and now they're finding themselves in an extremely difficult situation because now you don't really have electricity, you don't have water. That also means that probably there won't be any heat in the winter is already there, and I'll talk a little bit about the weather as well. So and then also what happened is the damage to electricity system was so severe that even mobile towers, cell phone towers that distribute signal, they were out in some places, and I would say many places out. That happened because they do have power generators next to them, but at the same time they consume quite a bit of power. So apparently power generators ran out of their small amount of, let's say, diesel fuel that they have, and because the electricity was absent for so long, so they also shut down. So this is basically the Ukrainian civilian infrastructure is really on the verge of collapse, and another hit like this, or at most two, and it's going to be taken out. And what this really means, there will be a lot of refugees in Europe again, because essentially, you cannot survive unless you are in the village, as I said before. And even there, you need to be prepared, not just house, but have a stove, they have a wood stove, so you can cook, you can heat yourself and stuff like that. And because many people used to sort of modern lines so far, they didn't bother to have those stoves, and now it's a little bit too late to install that. So there could be quite a bit of problem very very soon. And you know the Ukrainian government obviously that is not helpful. One thing they did that was actually about a week ago that was correct. They made the announcement to people who are staying, outside of Ukraine, not to come back for the winter, which actually was one thing that they did right. Then going to the weather, so Russia or Moscow had already snow, I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, so 30th or 29th. What this typically means is what happens sort of in Moscow comes to Ukraine in about 2, 3, 4 days, unless some drastic changes. So the winter is extremely early this year, and the cold weather is also extremely early this year in Ukraine. So that will create another challenge if this whole infrastructure collapses pretty quickly. So this is going to be potentially big sort of, I would say, catastrophe, civilian catastrophe in Ukraine that's coming, and I would bet that it's happening. The chances of it happening higher than not happening, basically, because for Russia, the logic here is to create extremely unbearable condition for Ukrainian civilian population that forces basically, so that the population says to government, okay, we want to stop this war, let's accept peace on whatever terms, basically let's accept capitulation. That's the plan that Russia is pursuing, because it's clearly cannot win military wise on the battlefield. So then they creating they attacking basically the waging war by different means, by economic means, and by war on civilian population, on infrastructure. And that's, to be fair, that's pretty effective way of sort of waging the war, essentially. Now let's actually discuss the related topic, which is this grain deal that collapsed. What happens is that ships that were stuck in Odessa ports and nearby ports, they probably will be allowed to leave, and that's up to 200 vessels. However, the new vessels are not allowed by Russia, and the way they do it is they say, well, we don't provide any security. It's very unsecure. You're doing it at your own risk, and we don't want you to come there. So at the same time, Turkey wants this, and obviously Ukraine wants this, because Turkey is actually profiting mightily, because it buys Ukrainian grain, turns it into flour, and sells flour, or exports flour around the world. So they basically, pick up more value add from all of this. So they have incentive for this thing to continue. So they said, okay, we're going to continue Turkey and Ukraine, um, but Russia, as I said, issued warning, and what happened immediately, all of the vessels, so everybody understands, in order for the maritime trade to happen, all of the vessels needs to be insured, because vessel owners will not go to places that where they're not insured. So a London-based maritime insurer called Lloyd's immediately stopped insuring vessels that going to Ukraine. So essentially, that blocks and stops any trade, grain trade. So Russia doesn't even need to do much; just create a threat that makes law. This almost, I think it's like almost monopoly insurer in this field to stop insuring, which totally understandable. I'm not like this, just for everybody to understand. I'm not blaming Lloyd's. They in business. They want to make profit, and they don't want to lose money, and that's totally understandable. So it's sort of normal reaction. There's no other expectation there. So what happens? And Russia knows this. That's where what I'm trying to explain, that they are clever to understand all of this sort of chain reactions that could happen, and they press correct buttons to create those chain reactions. So essentially, no new ships probably will be coming there to Odessa. Maybe there will be some kind of like like risky vessel owners, but that's not gonna work because it's gonna the rate that the vessel owner will charge is gonna be huge, astronomical. So essentially, they will pocket all of the profit, and the trade becomes unprofitable, right, for Ukraine. So this is what's going on with this trade. So it's blocked, and what like my thinking of why Russia does it. What happened is in this grain deal, they didn't get really good sort of. It didn't work for them, and exactly for that reason because they cannot get maritime insurance for the vessels that go to Russia. Then they need to use this kind of like gray vessels that like sort of like want to do risky stuff, but it costs a lot, and it basically eats up all of the Russian producer and traders' profits, grain trade profits. So it becomes unprofitable. So basically, all of the value add is being basically extracted and kept by this risky vessel owners, and so it doesn't make sense for Russia. So basically, it looks like Russia wants to renegotiate this deal. That's one sort of logic here. The other logic is to create extreme pressure on on Ukrainian population, business by cutting off all possible flows of income to Ukraine, right? Because they cut off ability to export electricity, and now they cut off ability to export grain from Ukraine, because those two left that was still left functioning out of Ukrainian economy. The rest is totally destroyed, and there's nothing. So what this really creates, it's the negative effect will be probably felt in a month or 2 months, where literally there will be essentially everybody is going to be unemployed. Everyone who was sort of working in something, or not everybody, but it's probably exaggeration. But overall, there will be huge unemployment. I don't know, let's say 50% or something like that, 60%. It's unclear, but and at the same time, people have no income, no nothing, and there's no help, no support from the government. It's going to be very difficult social situation in probably months or two as a result of this, and Russia is fully aware where they actually actively trying to create that difficult situation inside of Ukraine. So this is kind of like you know thing on the horizon basically. Then what else? Another topic is actually now switching to Russia. Russian exports of crude oil. So Russia is still producing about 10.7 million barrels per day. So this is essentially the same number that was at the beginning of the war in March. So actually, which Russia managed to keep the production. It didn't go down despite the sanctions, and part of the reason is because some of the oil field services companies, international, are staying in Russia and working there. So Russia was able to maintain this production. However, there is sort of problem looming on the horizon for Russian crude oil export, and the problem is that Europe stops buying Russian crude on December 5th. So, and that's a large amount. So it remains to be seen if, let's say, China and India want to pick up that amount if they still need it. Uh, so Russia is also kind of facing difficult times on its own, but it's obviously not comparable to what's going on in Ukraine. Ukraine is slowly getting devastated these days. Now let's actually switch to the front line, and let's see what's going on there. We're gonna do it in a clockwise fashion as we always do, starting from the north and going south and then west. So along the state border situation, more or less quiet. Nothing really to update there. Let's switch now to North Luhansk front line. Things here are also more or less the same. Unsuccessful attempts of Ukrainian troops to attack in this area, slightly north of Zhitlivka, and I think I think the village called Krasnopopivka, which these attacks will lead to nowhere. Essentially, Russian defenses are strong enough, and as I said, before the balance of power is such that Ukrainian troops, without getting some additional either technical advantage or skill advantage, will not be able to overcome Russian defenses. And situation will be playing in the Russian favor with passage of time, just because more and more Russian troops are going to be coming here. So the defensive line will be sort of stronger and stronger and stronger. Again, no success here. In many ways, it's a futile attempt at this point. It's just Ukrainian command needs to change strategy and think how to increase skill set as opposed to just using brute force attacks. Now let's move to the North Donbass front line. Things here also very similar. Russian Wagner mercenaries are attacking more or less across the whole sort of northern section of this front line. As always, nothing really new here, and basically situation more or less status quo, no advances of the Russian troops today. Now let's quickly move to central Donbass front line. Since here are also very similar, so Russian attacks in this out of this Pisky salient, out of this, call it like, I don't know, Novobakhmutivka salient, I guess we can call it that way. As I said, there is a problem starting to develop for Ukrainian defensive line here on the sort of northern side of the salient, where Russian troops are advancing, and it's kind of like creates a problem with the coherence of Ukrainian defensive positions here. There's no progress in Marinka for the Russian side, and then there was, as mentioned, a Russian attack towards Vugledar. Russian troops managed to overcome Ukrainian defenses in Pavlivka, and essentially Pavlivka is kind of like a split into halves. Sort of northern half under Ukrainian control and southern under Russian control. At the same time, this even some of the Russian sources admit that this attack kind of leads to nowhere, because this village Pavlivka kind of like located in depression, basically like a low ground, and then Vugledar is kind of like high up, like sort of really above it. So from Vugledar you can see very far, and it's actually correct the artillery fire without need of UAVs, which, just a reminder, Ukrainian government, Ukrainian systems still don't have UAVs similar to Orlan 10. It's still, shooting in the darkness in many cases. What this really means, even if Russian troops do capture completely Pavlivka, they will be just a perfect target for artillery fire. And so this attack is unclear, the goal of this attack, because Vugledar is pretty well entrenched defensive positions there. So the chances of basically taking it over are not that great, unless Russia has really large number of accumulated large number of troops. Remains to be seen if that's possible, but I would say I'm very skeptical of that. So essentially, this looks at this point as a moot point attack that sort of leads to nowhere. Now let's quickly check Zaporizhya front line, where nothing happens as always. So yeah, things didn't change here as I said. Now let's move to Kherson bridgehead. Things here are also stabilized. As I said before, Russian troops are getting reinforcements, replacements. The number of boots on the ground increases, so that creates stable defensive positions. Ukrainian side still targeting those pontoon bridges and ferries. Yes, it creates sort of problems with the supply, but the problems are not there basically yet. Not severe enough for Russian defensive lines to start sort of collapsing, or they on Russian sides consider moving out of here. At the same time, I just want to say it again. This is going to be lost for the Russian side, just a question of time. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and until tomorrow, bye bye.